welcome to another episode of Gaming News Weekly, your weekly gaming news show every Friday at 5 o'clock with your hosts, me, I'm Rich, and my good friend and channel padre, Tabs. Say hello, mate.
Hello, mate.
Excellent. So, as I've just said, we do this every week. If you're here and you're new, please subscribe. We'd love to have you on board. And I don't need to ask you to like because I know you will have already liked this. So, we're going to get into the four juicy stories this week, as opposed to the normal 3, followed up by everything else. But before we do that, we're going to get into what we've been playing this week. So, Tabs, what have you been playing this week?
I think I've been playing anything, mate.
Wow.
Inscription was probably the last thing we had a little go on together, didn't we?
We did.
We were queued up for some Valheim. But yeah, we played some Inscription. Said you started the story mode, which is cool. And yeah, we got to this really weird bit that I didn't see, again, because I didn't have such a professional coach riding shotgun with me. But Rich basically broke the game because he didn't die, because it's kind of like a roguelike card game. So you're supposed to die in deck build. And anyway, he didn't die. He got to the second boss, I think it was. And they basically threw down a slew of really powerful cards to, put the bring the lockdown on your progress, wasn't it, mate? That's essentially what they were doing.
Yeah, it was interesting because the battle was going really well. And I thought, I think I'd taken one life, and it was the odds were obviously stacked in my favour going into the last part of this sort of second part of the battle. And then all of a sudden it said, I don't like this or something, and then the red mist descended, and then all these cards got dropped, and yeah, it was impossible. There's nothing I had that could have. I don't even know whether you could afford that if you got a full deck of cards.
No, I think you'd have needed to have some super powerfully broken cards, which perhaps would have been possible at that stage of the game. So, yeah, it was cool to see that the game was intelligent enough to do that to you. But yeah, that's what the last thing I really touched, mate. I'm trying to rack my brains. Nothing else. Over to you, my friend.
Actually, quite a quiet week for me on gaming. Trying to catch up on lots of TV series and stuff that have missed me by. So I've been sort of watching lots of the Marvel things. I've caught up on Hawkeye. I've caught up on Eternals. Was it Shang-Chi? I've caught up on that. So a lot of TV for me this week. So I've only had a very short, well, apart from obviously the aforementioned go on Inscription with Tabs, I've only had a very brief session. Tabs has a question.
No, I've just remembered. I've started Bowser's Fury.
Oh, nice.
On the Switch. I did play a game. Yes, I definitely started that. It's a sort of open world Mario. It was like the bolt-on game to, is it 3D World? I forget now. But yeah, quite enjoyable. Frame rate's a little bit dodge, but apart from that, yeah, I'm liking it so far.
Brilliant. And yeah, so I just... So I just did about 30 minutes or so on Farming Simulator. I think I'm sort of parking that, I think. I've sort of developed the farm. I really enjoyed doing the farm, but I've paid off my £500,000 loan. I've got plenty of money in the bank. I'm sort of like, I don't really know what to do next. So I'm sort of like stuck. I'm not sure how to progress it further. So it's a shame I can't pack everything up and then move to a different town. But obviously that's, and as far as I'm aware, that's not possible. So yeah, that's this week. So we've got a lot to get through on the news tab, so I think we should head straight in. Yeah. Right, first up we have got Bungie Buy Out, and quite a lot to go through on this, so stay tuned on this one, but this comes from The Verge. Microsoft has Minecraft, Epic Games has Fortnite, and Sony now has Destiny. In a $3.6 billion deal, Sony is acquiring Bungie, the game studio famous for creating the Halo and Destiny universes. It's a big deal in a month already full of massive deals. It's also backed by some equally big promises from Bungie about its independence for the future of Destiny and commitments to multi-platform games. Beyond Destiny, this deal reveals Sony's ambition to compete with games like Fortnite alongside the steps it has taken to bring PlayStation brand to multiple platforms. The deal itself is unusual, Bungie will maintain creative independence inside Sony, self-publishing its future games despite being owned 100% by Sony. Destiny 2 will remain multi-platform, so it's not going to disappear from the Xbox and turn into a PlayStation exclusive. Bungie has even committed to keeping the game the same no matter where you choose to play. Very interesting. Bungie's future games won't be PlayStation exclusive either. We want the worlds we are creating to extend to anywhere people play games, reads a Vision blog post from Bungie's Joe Blackburn and Justin Truman. So what is Sony paying $3.6 billion for exactly?
And then I'll just bolt on, because this really is just a bolt on to this story. The headline, Sony spending to continue, and this comes from Push Square. And they say, and there's more to come in terms of these acquisitions from Sony, according to PlayStation Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan. Ryan tells Games Industry, Biz I think it is, that we should absolutely expect more PlayStation acquisitions. He continues, we are by no means done. With PlayStation, we have a long way to go. Elsewhere in the organisation, we have many more moves to make.
Very, very interesting. I guess my initial reaction to the Bungie announcement was, first off, a little bit shocked. It came a bit left field, much like the Activision Blizzard scenario from last week. But I feel like I was a bit disappointed with this. Of all the studios that they could have gone out and bought, this was not really the one that I thought, yes, that's a go-to. Tabs, I think, has different thoughts on this, and I wonder whether that's because of the games that are tied to Bungie. So, I didn't really play Destiny, so the fact that the Destiny franchise is potentially under Sony's umbrella now, although it says not in this article, maybe that's why Tabs feels really a lot better about this. We know that Bungie are very good at making really good first-person shooters, because the original Halo was that and was a very good game indeed. But yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily think this is a misstep by Sony, but it has all the hallmarks in my mind of being a knee-jerk reaction. But I know lots of people have said that it isn't. Tabs, what do you make of this?
Yeah, like you, to begin with, to be fair, all I was doing was comparing it to the Microsoft purchases. And when you compare it to the, $7.5 billion that the Bethesda ZeniMax Studios purchase cost, and then you consider all the IP they got out of that acquisition, all of the games they could just slap straight onto the Game Pass back catalogue, it just felt like so basically they've got Destiny, and then I think Bungie are working on a new IP. I think there might be another IP called Marathon. So let's say 3 IPs, one's an unknown quantity, for about half of what was paid for ZeniMax Studios and Bethesda and all their IP. So it felt like a rip-off initial reaction. But then the more I've thought about it, the more I've actually thought, this is shrewder than I first, put together in my own head. And like you say, I know there are a lot of people. Alana Pierce came out and basically said, this isn't a direct response. This has been cooking for months. And to be fair, Sony have actually said that, that they have been in talks with Bungie for quite some time. I think even last year was thrown about. I think the only thing I would say to that is, just because we're only aware of this purchase now, doesn't mean that Sony weren't privy to, deals that were cooking underneath the industry. They might have, Intel coming in and have a feel on what Xbox are looking to buy and acquire. So just because it's not available for public consumption, I don't think we can just say, they had no idea, therefore it can't be a direct response. Bit reductive for me. But just to give some reasoning, go on, do you want to dive in?
The only thing I will say on that is, I was under the impression, and might be completely way off this, when a big acquisition is going to happen, it has to be sort of announced to people in case somebody else wants to buy it. So like, for instance, if I said I'm going to go down the road and buy a co-op, then obviously everyone else that might want to buy the co-op has to be going, right, would anybody else like to buy the co-op before these buy it? So I don't know.
Isn't that an auction though? That's an auction.
No, I'm sure there's something where you have to announce that you're going to buy like somebody, like not necessarily publicly, but you have to announce. That's why we hear of, apparently these are going to be taking over, like Morrison's are going to be taking over this place or whatever, because it has to have some sort of, business conscience within the people. So I do think that there's going to be inside knowledge that Sony will have known that there was something rumbling on this, absolutely.
Oh, we know as well. There's many more deals cooking, and we'll come on to that. There's rumours there, and I'm sure the bods behind the scenes are much more privy to the, they've got their finger on the pulse than we have as the public and as gamers. But anyway, so why I think it's shrewd. I feel like obviously we saw ActiBliz got purchased by Microsoft and they acquire Call of Duty. And although they came out to say, we've got these contractual agreements, we think for 3 years, 3 more titles. And they came out probably to try and, in response to Sony bringing up Phil and saying, you've just trashed our stock price, can you throw us a bone here?
Yeah.
So Phil comes out and says, no, we're going to keep it on their console. We're going to, see to our contractual agreements. Regardless of that, I think surely there's got to be a bit of insecurity in Sony where they think, how much can we rely on that? After 3 years have passed, which isn't really a long time in the grand scheme of a business, as with the lineage of Sony and PlayStation, are they in safe hands? Could they pull the rug underneath them and make Call of Duty an exclusive? And we know what a big game that is in that kind of live service, monetization part of the industry. So what this Bungie purchase kind of does was it gives them a bargaining chip because it's also Destiny 2, a successful live service shooter game. And it's also multi-platform, which they're obviously doubling down to say we're going to keep it multi-platform. But it just gives them a bargaining chip now, because let's say they can maintain the success of Destiny 2 and the franchise. Well, Xbox won't want to see that go walkies, would they? In fact, it's funny, mate, this, because apparently it's one of Phil Spencer's favourite games. Apparently he's put 50 days into playing Destiny, over 1,000 hours.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I thought that was a lovely little, it's almost like the mob boss getting revenge on his, on his rival by buying up his favourite thing or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, they've got a bargaining chip there, and they've also, even if it all goes pear-shaped, they rip Call of Duty off for exclusivity. Well, they've still got some skin in that game, in as far as it's a first-person shooter and it's live service, and we know that that's a very popular, has some mainstream appeal, should we say. And then not just that, then you start to think about, the expertise they're buying. And that is, again, a shooter. Bungie are well known for creating really top shelf FPS shooter mechanics and gameplay that's really addictive and satisfying. And then on top of that, they've obviously got their bruises from bringing Destiny to life. And it's been a bumpy old road. I know, I've been started out a fan and had my various ups and downs. But they've got staying power because they've still got a lot of concurrent player base. And I think it's considered a success when you compare it to the likes of what some of the big live service games they make. Fortnite we mentioned earlier, Call of Duty. Trying to think what else there is. But certainly, yeah. So they're buying that expertise to trickle down into all their other IPs potentially. So they've not got to, work through the same hardships Bungie have been through. They can literally go to that studio and say, guys, how can we make this work in just pulling out my ass? God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, all their PlayStation Studio IP. So the more you look at it, the shrewder it sounds. And we know a lot of this has also been confirmed from Jim Ryan afterwards. What do we say, mate? I think they've rolled out their ambitions to make 10 live service. Well, I thought live service IPs. You've corrected me and said maybe multiplayer games.
Yeah, you'd said live service, but I'd read they'd said multiplayer games. And I'm guessing you've gone 1 and 1 must be 2 then.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. But it all leans into this long-term strategy they have. So the more I thought about it, the more it doesn't seem too bad. It's still a lot of money to buy, but yeah, it's really interesting. And do you want to talk a bit about some of the rumours, mate, of other purchases we're hearing?
I mean, it's one of those. There's so many. Who knows where they're going to buy? I mean, Konami's been suggested. I don't know what Capcom. Have I heard about Capcom potentially?
Yes. Jeff Grubb tweeted something about It Takes Two to Tango. So people immediately thought Take Two.
Yeah.
And then they thought, hang on, could it be It Takes Two is made by EA? Goes as far as.
Yeah.
Could it be EA? And then somebody said, oh, actually, that's an achievement in a Resident Evil game. So could it therefore be Capcom? And I think a Japanese studio would make a lot of sense, given Sony's kind of, place in the world and the industry. And their long time relationship with Capcom as well. So, Monster Hunter, Resident Evil. So I really love to see them buy, I think two you said, mate, Capcom and Konami. I think that would be amazing if they could lock those down.
Yeah, especially as certainly the Konami, all of their IPs just seem so stagnant right now. There's nothing happening with any of them, so definitely want to get some of them. I think my just around this subject off really before we move on. I think lots of the moves that we're seeing made right now, I think some of them don't make any sense. Like this Bungie one, I think on a today, that doesn't seem like it makes sense. But the purchase is not really about today, is it? The purchase is about, but where does that leave me in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Where does that leave me in terms of not having it or having it? And I think lots of the moves that we're seeing made by both Microsoft and Sony, they're all related to moves like puzzles to the piece that we don't even know about at the moment that's going to be in 5-10 years time. So I think
it's like market share, isn't it, mate? It's like if you don't have some skin in the game, if you don't have an iron in the fire, you're going to get left behind. It's like they're hedging their bets. So if live service shooters become a massive trend and make loads of money, well, they want to make sure they're on that boat, if you like.
Exactly.
Because if they don't have any skin in the game, then they're going to get left behind. And that's the thing. They've kind of, Xbox, I think, are forcing the hand. And we've seen the acquisitions happening, smaller scale, for years now. But obviously it's now really intensifying. And I think Sony are just very mindful that they need to, like I say, hedge those bets. Because if Microsoft had bought 50-60% of the industry, well, the probability is that if any trends and fires light up in certain of those areas, they've got the ticket, the front row seats to success. And if Sony haven't bought into that and they just leave it to chance, they could get left behind. So I think a lot of it's to do with that. One last thing I'll say, mate, and then I'll let you come back on it, is just to say, because we did moan about this whole trend. And that doesn't change. I know we're Sony ponies, or at least in our past we were. It doesn't change the fact that I still don't like this trend of consolidation of the industry for all the reasons we discussed. That it's just, I think it's bad for the representation of the industry and for the stewardship when you've only got 1-2 key superpowers who have so much power and influence over the whole thing. So I still don't approve it as a trend. I'm not all backing behind Sony because we love them. But come on, mate, come back.
Completely agree with you. The only thing that I like about what's been said about this is that Bungie will remain an independent studio. Just they'll be under the Sony. Now that could be all BS, but I like the terms on that. I like the fact that, whereas we've heard with Activision Blizzard, it's fairly obvious that Microsoft are going to have quite their own hand in that and make sure that the right things are happening in the right ways. And that obviously needed to happen from a business side of things. Hopefully that doesn't trickle too far down into the games and stuff that they're making. So that's the only thing I will say on that. But yeah, it's interesting. I like you say, I don't know what the future holds, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and what the next move is.
It is, yeah. It is really interesting, just from a kind of as a bystander, just to see it all happen. I mean, it's kind of scary. And pick your side for the metaverse is what it really feels like. But yeah, all we can do at this point is try and make the best of whatever happens, mate. But shall I move us on?
Go for it, mate.
So second story today is Dying Light 2 reviews are in. And Metacritic, it's currently sitting, at least on the PS5, at 77. Not too bad. So PSU gave it a 90. This is what they had to say. Dying Light 2, Stay Human, has been a long time coming, and thankfully it's worth the wait. I loved the time I spent exploring Villador, I'm going to go with. Finding random events and scaling buildings took me back to the old days of Assassin's Creed 2. While I wish I wasn't being timed on the occasions I went into a dark building or decided to explore at night, it's a minor issue to overlook when most of the game is so brilliantly executed and fun to play. Hand over to you, mate.
Excellent. So VG247 gave it an 80, and they had this to say: Dying Light 2 is messy and uneven. It's also unique, exhilarating, and just plain fun to play, with one of the best settings in recent memory, despite the nagging feeling that the game could and should be more than what it is. Techland has made great strides forward with the sequel, but it's clear that the future of Dying Light can't be just about making a bigger city to climb around in. The sequel has given the series some good breadth, now it just needs some proper depth.
And then finally, as part of this little cross section, the Sixth Axis gave it a 70, and they said Dying Light 2 expands and refines a formula Techland has been peddling since its breakout success with Dead Island. This sequel learns a lot from modern open world video games. Its massive, zombie-infested sandbox rarely feeling empty, especially as you breeze through city blocks with a Mirror's Edge-like finesse. However, Dying Light 2 inherits the same problems: a dull story, tiresome combat, and character progression that's a tad too sluggish. So mate, we'll save ourselves some time that we spent on that first story, because I think it's safe to say this isn't a game that particularly lights fire in our personal worlds. We just really wanted to provide a bit of a cross-section for BArcadians out there that might be thinking about a purchase, and it's a relatively big-ish game, isn't it, and released this month.
I think the biggest problem for me in terms of a game like this is, with so much or so many like big colossal games coming out, where do I find the time to play a game like this?
Especially it's 500 hours long.
I know I'm not putting the game down when I say that, and I'm not saying people shouldn't go and play it. Obviously, games I'm excited that are coming out, maybe other people aren't excited to play. I just don't feel, bearing in mind, in fairness to the games that I'm talking about, where they don't currently have ratings at the moment, they've not been reviewed. But this sits at a 77, so it's not breaking the box of games. So I don't know, I just struggle to know where I would fit this in. So needless to say, I probably won't be buying this.
This is it, mate. I think BArcadians, that was for your service more than anything. So let us know if you are a fan and what you think about it, and if you're excited in the comments. Mate, for me, I'm happy. Do you want to move us on?
Let's do it. Right, let's get on to the good stuff. Gt7 Preview. And the Independent had this to say: Kazunori Yamauchi. Okay. Creator of the Gran Turismo series, kicked things off by saying that Gran Turismo 7 will be the pinnacle of the series and the most complete game yet, aimed at new players as well as veterans. Over 400 cars will be available to drive over 90 course layouts in 34 locations, with some being fictional and others based on real circuits around the world. Another new feature was announced. Another feature that was announced was Gran Turismo Cafe, where players can select a menu of cars to collect. Collecting all the cars on a certain menu will unlock a dialogue option from a car designer to talk about each model. Players can visit a museum tailored to each car manufacturer to learn more about the individual brands. One example that we saw was the history of Dr. Ferdinand Porsche and how he established his firm. License tests also make a return, where players can try and rank gold, silver and bronze on different driving techniques such as drag racing and drifting. Tuning cars for each style will play an important role in succeeding in these trials. In terms of performance, Gran Turismo 7 is confirmed to have a ray tracing mode which will accurately simulate lighting and reflections. GT7 will also promises accurate weather simulation based on air currents, altitude, track conditions in different parts of the world. A day-night cycle will also accurately maps out skylines based on geographical locations. Now, I have to say, we actually watched this together last night on a call because, well, why not? And I have to say...
Your bag, innit? And we've got quite the history with it on A-Spec, specifically.
Absolutely, and I think everyone knows car racing games are one of my favourite genres, so I'm really excited for this, and I'm really excited for the return of a proper Gran Turismo rather than the sport, albeit I do love sport. I was left a little bit underwhelmed, certainly for the first half of this. I sort of was like, okay, but what's next? I kept thinking, okay, where's the big one? And then they started talking about dynamic weather, and I was all in, because that is, as far as I'm aware, what they're doing here is quite groundbreaking in the way in which it's doing it, the way in which it is taking it. Almost they've created an artificial weather sort of element within the game, so the game's deciding, when it rains, whether there's going to be dew on the track, how the track dries up, whether there'll be puddles in parts of the track that have undulations. There's so much going on here, and this technology that they're putting in here is absolutely fascinating. I think I actually said to Tabs that it'll be very interesting to see whether other game manufacturers take any cues from this and look into the technology of this and how they've gone about doing this, because the way this would like help itself or lend itself to more realistic open world games is really fascinating. I think that's the big leap. I think the graphics do look great, and I'm hoping that we'll get some really good frame rates to go with that, but I think that's the real big step for this iteration of Gran Turismo 7. What did you make of all of this, Tabs?
Yeah, I was impressed by it. It looks like they've lavished a lot of attention over it, and obviously they're keen to return this to, as Kaz says, the pinnacle of the series. So they really want to go to town on the kind of the Gran Turismo mode, the main story mode. So that's great. I think, like you though, as much as I thought some of these little additions sounded great and a nice little way to incentivize what essentially is like a grind, isn't it, in the story mode? It's rags to riches, and it's a lot about collecting cars and improving cars. The big thing was that dynamic weather. I thought, right, that's a kind of a big thing that can really affect races and make them feel more intense, more alive, more strategic.
Absolutely.
And that was amazing. What I really was hoping was after that, because I think that was already sort of hinted at in previous trailers, I thought there'd be something else they could drop as, like a big kind of scene stealer, bit of a game changer kind of thing again. Whether that would have been something about the online components, which I know there's a lot of followers of, or just some other sort of gameplay feature and mechanic that would have felt truly next gen. I was hoping for. And don't get me wrong, it must be hard, because this isn't Mario Kart. They can't just like create physics, or they've got to stick to realism, and that's really the only direction they can push in, because it's all about being a driving simulator. But yeah, like you, mate, left me a little bit cold on the fact that I really was hoping there'd be this feature at the end that everybody'd be like, whoa.
I think the other thing for me is, so they've announced this dynamic weather and it's fantastic, and my immediate thought was, because at anyone that plays Gran Turismo online, what they call the daily races, these are like race events that it pairs you with like people of a similar like rank as you in terms of your driving like standard and your driving prowess, I guess. Those races become really mundane, even ones with pit stops in, because everyone, after a period of time, everyone's doing exactly the same thing. Because after a period of time, it's obvious, well, if you pit on this lap, that's how you win the that's how you can...
That's optimum.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas I feel like if they're going, and they haven't specifically said whether the dynamic weather system will be on the online races, so that is a caveat to this, but that then will create completely dynamic races like they would be in real life. Like, is it going to rain? Okay, well, if it rains, when do I need to change over to wet tyres? When do I need to change over to dry tyres? Can you hang it out? And I feel like that's going to completely revolutionise the way in which online races are done, if it's brought to that. But as you say, I don't think, apart from the fact there's lots of new visuals, lots of new cars, there's obviously more tracks than we've seen before, there's not a lot new here, which is a little worrying. But nevertheless, I'm all in, going to buy it, 10 coppers.
What do you think, mate? Just a quick one. If they introduce some sort of like continuity, maintenance continuity of a car on online racing, because that would basically, and some people would hate that, I think, but I think other people might think, well, it's another element to, like you say, distinguish things and keep you on your toes. Because if you're not on top of maintaining your car, looking after it, it's going to hold you back, isn't it? As you race over time.
I don't know how. It would be nice as well if you've created a car to race online and you've incrementally upgraded that. Well, it would be possible to, if you crash it, say, really badly or whatever, it totals your car. It's gone. It's completely ruined. I don't know. it felt like it was missing something, but it's difficult to know what they could do. It's a racing simulation. They're just making it more realistic. I don't know. It's difficult to know what else they could do.
This is it. But anyway, I think you're still going to buy it, aren't you, mate? So,
oh yeah, 10 copies, mate. Yeah, I can't wait.
I think I probably will as well. I'll see you wait for the reviews.
Wicked.
Yeah,
I hope you do,
it's a big
mate.
time sink, isn't it? That's the only thing. It's a big time sink for what it is. And
I really hope you do, because I do want to do some online racing.
Okay, mate.
Right.
Finish this off, mate.
Absolutely, everything else. Right, first up, 12 years after Skate 3, and EA has said that Skate 4 will be launching soon.
Big fan base, that one, I think.
Yeah,
so,
I really liked I think Skate 1 and 2 really liked. Didn't get Skate 3, but...
Never got into it for me. It always felt too hard when I tried around yours. Breath of the Wild 2 is still on track for a 2022 release. Nintendo's latest financial report reiterates the release window. And mate, I should just add in, I'm sure I've seen something else as well that is hinting towards a GTA 6 release. Is it like next year?
No.
Yeah,
what?
Something in their earnings. There was like a projected revenue spike that could only be explained by something like GTA 6.
Wow, now that is big news. And finally this week, Fortnite's next crossover is reportedly an Uncharted treasure hunt. Which actually sounds really good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Cool. Yeah, it is crazy.
But anyway, that's it for this week's news. Over 30 minutes of juicy content for you. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it and you're new here, please do subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to have you on board with the channel and show your appreciation to the video. But I think that's all we've got time for this week. Another one for the archive.
See you next week. Stamped and completed.